The Panama Canal is one of the most strategically important waterways in the world, and the United States has renewed its interest in controlling it. This artificial canal connects the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, allowing ships to bypass the long and treacherous journey around South America. Since its completion in 1914, the canal has been a vital artery for global trade, carrying billions of dollars in cargo every year. For the United States, the Panama Canal has always been more than just a trade route. It is a critical asset for national security and economic dominance. More than 40% of U.S. container trade passes through the canal, making it one of the most crucial maritime passages for American commerce. The ability to move goods quickly between the east and west coasts without traveling around South America gives U.S. companies a massive logistical advantage. The U.S. initially controlled the Panama Canal for nearly a century before handing it over to Panama in 1999 under the Torrijos-Carter treaties. Since then, Panama has managed the canal, overseeing its expansion and modernization to accommodate larger ships. However, recent global events have reignited U.S. interest in reclaiming influence over the canal. One of the biggest concerns is the growing presence of China, which has expanded its economic footprint in Panama. Chinese companies operate ports near both entrances of the canal, raising fears that Beijing could use its influence to control shipping routes. Some U.S. officials warn that China's growing stake in Panama could jeopardize American trade and military movements. China has already invested billions in infrastructure projects in Latin America, and its involvement in the Panama Canal only adds to U.S. concerns. Some analysts believe China could use its influence to slow or restrict U.S. shipping through the canal if tensions between the two nations escalate. The canal's importance to global trade also means that any disruption could send shockwaves through the global economy. Another major reason the U.S. wants more control over the canal is its role in military strategy. The U.S. Navy frequently moves warships and supplies between the Atlantic and Pacific using the canal, making it a key military asset. Without guaranteed access, U.S. military operations could be slowed or restricted in times of conflict. In 2024, former President Donald Trump suggested that the U.S. should consider retaking the canal to prevent foreign powers from exerting influence over it. His statement reignited debates over whether the United States should intervene to ensure Panama remains a reliable ally. Panama, however, has made it clear that it has no intention of relinquishing control of the canal to any foreign power. Panamanian President José Raúl Mulino has strongly stated that the canal is a sovereign asset and will remain under Panama's control. Despite these assurances, the U.S. continues to explore diplomatic and economic strategies to maintain influence over the canal. Some policymakers believe the U.S. should increase investments in Panama to counterbalance China's growing economic presence. Others argue that the U.S. should form stronger military agreements with Panama to ensure its continued cooperation. In recent years, climate change has also added another layer of complexity to the canal's operations. Drought conditions have caused water levels in the canal to drop, limiting the number of ships that can pass through. As a result, the Canal Authority has been forced to impose restrictions, slowing global trade and increasing shipping costs. These disruptions have made the U.S. even more concerned about the long-term stability of the canal. If Panama fails to manage the canal effectively, American businesses and military operations could face significant delays. Some experts suggest that the U.S. should work with Panama to develop long-term solutions for water conservation and canal efficiency. Others believe the U.S. should build alternative shipping routes to reduce dependence on the Panama Canal. The idea of constructing a new canal in Central America has been floated for years, but no serious efforts have been made to pursue it. Another alternative is investing in infrastructure that allows goods to be transported over land instead of relying solely on maritime shipping. Despite all these concerns, Panama remains a key U.S. ally, and both countries have a vested interest in keeping the canal open and operational. For now, the U.S. is focused on strengthening its economic and diplomatic ties with Panama, rather than pursuing direct control. However, if geopolitical tensions continue to rise, the debate over U.S. involvement in the canal could intensify. Some military strategists argue that regaining control of the canal would give the U.S. a strategic advantage in future conflicts. Others warn that any attempt to take control would damage relations with Panama and other Latin American nations. The history of U.S. involvement in Panama is already controversial, with many Panamanians still viewing past American control of the canal as an era of foreign dominance. The handover of the canal in 1999 was seen as a major victory for Panamanian sovereignty, and any attempt to reverse it would likely be met with resistance. At the same time, Panama relies heavily on U.S. trade and investments, meaning cooperation between the two nations is essential. The canal generates billions of dollars in revenue for Panama, making it a key part of the country's economy. If Panama were to restrict U.S. access, it could face economic backlash, potentially harming its own financial stability. For now, the most realistic path forward is continued collaboration between the U.S. and Panama to ensure the canal remains a reliable trade route. The U.S. is expected to continue pressuring Panama to limit Chinese influence while offering financial incentives to keep relations strong. As the global balance of power shifts, the Panama Canal will remain a focal point of economic and military strategy. The question of U.S. control over the canal may not be resolved anytime soon, but its importance will only grow in the coming decades. As trade routes become more competitive, ensuring stability in the Panama Canal will be a top priority for world powers. For now, the canal remains under Panama's control, but U.S. interest in this crucial waterway is stronger than ever. What happens next will depend on how Panama navigates its relationships with both the U.S. and China in the years to come. One thing is certain: the Panama Canal will continue to be one of the most valuable and contested waterways in the world.